Welcome to Sparking Everyday Discipleship, where we discuss books and resources and how to disciple our children, encouraging and empowering parents to spark important conversations for everyday discipleship every day. I'm your host, Terry Hullard Brown, and we're so glad you've chosen to spend some time with us today. We have a fun one for you today as we answer some of your pressing questions. And I just love to get questions from families because it helps me know where your hearts are, where your minds are, what you need. So let's jump into that conversation. Remember, this podcast is sponsored by Hyperbole Publishing, and we are a publishing company that desires to give parents those resources they need to be able to disciple their children and lead their families well. So let's jump in now. I have so many great questions from parents. At every live event I go to, I ask parents, what is their biggest parenting question? And so I have a great resource here of all kinds of questions. They range from very specific to questions like why, how, and one person just wrote everything. And so there apparently is a lot of uncertainty as parents out there and wanting advice, wanting information. I'm going to do my best to give you answers to some of your questions. Some of them I'm not quite sure how to answer, why or how or everything, but I will do my best to answer the questions I can. And so today we're going to talk about, am I doing enough? Am I teaching them enough about Christ? Another one said, the best way to show my kids how to live like Jesus, or how to keep kids living for Jesus after they leave home. So this is, of course, as Christian parents, this is one of our biggest questions, is how do we equip our children to follow Christ? And how do we know if we're teaching them enough? I want to go back to what I've taught many times about discipleship, and it's really the core of what we do at Hyperbole Publishing. It's the core of what we do on this podcast, and in everything we do. Even the books I write are meant to spark important conversations. The Sparking Everyday Discipleship is all about that spark. We've got to have those conversations. We've got to be the ones to jump in first with the difficult conversations. And I was just talking with a person who's going to be on the podcast in October this year, and he was talking about how he would have a weekly meeting with his son just to touch base and talk about what's going on. I think that is amazing. For a while in my childhood, my dad would take me and my sister, and we would go play mini golf, and then we would go have dinner, dessert, something at a restaurant together. But it was time to spend with our dad and to have conversation. And we got that with my mom a lot, but we didn't get it with my dad a lot. It is a powerful, powerful thing to sit and just talk with your children, to have real conversations. If you know me and you know my kids, we do this a lot. We sit and we talk, even about the uncomfortable things. So that is number one. We have to have those conversations. We have to have those talks. So I have the 4 T's of discipleship, and I have a whole lot more too, but these are the main ones based on Deuteronomy 6 that we really need to purposefully plan to have in our children's lives. But before we jump into that further, let me just say, you cannot make the decision to follow Christ for your child. You can only make that decision for yourself. We each have that responsibility. Our child has to make that decision to follow Christ on their own. And we can pray for them and never, ever, ever stop praying for them. We must pray for them. But we cannot control that decision. God is in charge of it. He knows their heart. He knows their mind. He knows exactly what they need. He is the perfect father for them. Even when we're not the perfect parent, he is. We have to trust God. So I want to say that first of all, trust God. He loves your child even more than you do. He cares about your child even more than you do. And he knows your child even better than you do. We have to hold on to that truth and trust God. He wants them to follow him more than we do. So Keep praying. Even if they've walked away, keep praying. Even if they've rebelled or said they don't believe what you believe, keep praying and trusting God. So that's the biggest, number one, paramount thing of all things, is to trust God and keep praying. But then there are certainly things we can do and that we're commanded to do by God Himself from way back in Deuteronomy all through the entire Bible, that we are to teach our children. So the first T was to talk. Keep those conversations open. Always. Don't be afraid to approach any topic. Let your child know you're a safe place and that they can talk to you about anything. That is going to go miles toward them being more open to follow God, because they know they have a safe place. They know you're trustworthy, you're real. What you're sharing with them is real. Do not make it something it isn't. Do not lie. Do not be afraid. Fear not as a parent. Keep trusting God and jump into any conversation. Let your child know they can talk to you about absolutely anything. And so it's very important when you have these conversations, if your child comes up to you and confesses something or asks a question, we cannot respond with lecture, with anger. As to the best of our ability, we should not even respond with shock. We need to respond with a calmness, a meekness, and with a relationship attitude. We want what's best for our child. But that means we're human, they're human, and we can relate to each other. So we want to respond to them with that kind of an attitude. That's a calmness. If it's a problem we need to tackle, we're going to tackle the problem. We're not going to attack each other. And if it's a question they need answered and it's really hard for us to answer, we're going to pray on the spot while we're talking to them and ask the Holy Spirit to give us the words we need to say and to share. Remember the old stories, the old jokes about a child coming and asking, where do babies come from? The parents, like a boy, been dreading this day. And they lay out the whole biological process of having a baby and go on. And then the child says, well, Joey said that his brother came from St. John's Hospital. And so it wasn't the question they were really asking, where do babies come from? Be sure we're answering the actual question they're asking, but don't be afraid of whatever that question is, to be honest and open and real. Okay, so that's talk is the first T. Transparency, and these are in no particular order. Transparency would be the second T. We want to be real. If our child comes to us, let's say they're a teenager and they've been exposed to pornography. We know that it's out there. We know it's everywhere. And they maybe were with friends and they watched something they shouldn't have watched. They come to us just broken because, let's face it, the first time someone sees something like that, it is shocking and troubling and disturbing, especially if it's pornographic. We're going to be angry, but we're not angry at our child. We're angry at ourselves for failing. We're angry at those kids for having access to that. We're angry at the world for making it a part of our culture and something that is so readily available. There's a lot of room for anger there, but our child cannot feel that anger. We can't let them think we're angry with them or disappointed in them. We've got to show them we love them and we want to help them. And if you have a story of where you have failed in your life, you may want to say, well, here's what happened to me and how I handled it. Or here's what I've learned about when we fail. Just go to that. We've all sinned. We've all failed. We've all done something we shouldn't have done and regretted it. We can all relate to that, and we can share our own story. So be vulnerable, be transparent, talk about how hard it is to stay pure and to avoid the difficulties, traps that are out there, and how we can try to protect our children better next time, put better guards on our internet or whatever we need to do. But don't let them feel anger from you, disappointment from you, disillusionment from you. We need to be real and transparent and authentic. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to be real with them and gentle with them. And we're also going to share our own testimony. So that's the third thing. If you've overcome something in your life, or you've stumbled and you've struggled and God forgave you, He forgave all of us. He restored us to a right relationship with Him. And that is available to our child as well. If they see God as the forgiving, loving God that He is, yes, He's holy. And yes, there is a holy fear there, but He is the most loving, gracious Father ever. We need to let them know that we can confess our sins. We can understand that those sins were paid for on the cross, and we can't do anything that surprises God. He is not surprised by our failures. He knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. We need to let our children know that, share our testimony of what God has done in our lives, and be real with them. Okay, so we talk, we're transparent, and we have our testimony. Then, of course, the most important T of all is what we're called to do. Teach. We teach our children. So if our child fails, if they come to us and confess, let's use the same example, they've been exposed to pornography, we need to teach them what they can do to protect themselves in the future. We need to teach them how to handle temptation. When does temptation become a sin? What do we need to confess here? Because sometimes temptation happens and we feel so guilty that we were even tempted, and yet we walked away from the temptation and never sinned, but we carry that guilt because we think that was the sin. Now, sometimes the thought life that led to the temptation is sinful, and we need to confess that. And whatever is going on, we need to help our child understand how to handle temptation, that it is not easy, that it is painful sometimes, that we have to flee, that we have to look like peculiar people to those around us sometimes because we don't want to take part in whatever is happening. That is an important conversation we need to have. Those are the four main things for helping to teach our children, to help them grow and choose to follow Christ, but understanding that we can't make that decision for them, that they have to come to Christ on their own and choose to follow Him on their own, and that God has them. He cares about them. He loves them, and He wants them to follow Him too and trust Him in the process. So I guess our fifth T would be trust. Trust God and believe. We can't guarantee that our children won't depart from the faith we have taught them. We can't guarantee that they're not going to deconstruct. We can't guarantee any of that, but we can hold on to our trust in God and keep praying, keep believing. We can be open with our children and keep those conversations going. Talk to them, be transparent with them, teach them what we already know. Matthew 28 says that we are to teach them what God has taught us. That's what we do when we're discipling. Keep sharing your testimony, keep being transparent about what God has done in your life, and teach them diligently. So that's the first question, and it is such an important one, and it weighs on every parent, whether you are in a mixed needs family or whatever you're dealing with. This is a big question, but we have to understand we cannot guarantee anything because we can do it all right. We can teach our children everything, have them memorize scripture, go to church every Sunday, and when they become an adult, they can still choose to walk away from God. I have a cousin who walked away for a while. He was angry and was in a bad marriage and just struggling. And he has come back to God in a big way. So you never know what's going to happen. Keep trusting, keep praying. Don't give up. God has a plan. And if our children do follow Him their whole lives with faithfulness and a love for God, then just praise Him and thank Him because He's the one that's doing it. He's the one who's changing lives and changing hearts. I get a ton of questions about discipline. And so the next question is how to get a 3 and a 2-year-old to get along. And I also have a niece and nephew who they just hate each other and they're teen and preteen. We can have this happen at different times. Sibling rivalry is real. However, it doesn't have to be a war zone. So, my biggest advice that I can give you is respect your children, respect your spouse, and teach your children to respect each other. Now, if they're 2 and 3 years old, you're not going to be able to have a lecture with them about respect. It's going to be simply when they're fighting, you're going to have to play referee a little bit, but sometimes they've got to just work out their feelings with each other a little bit. Now, if they're fighting all the time and they're not getting along, they're 1 year apart, 2 and 3 years old. You know, a 2 year old and a 3 year old, they're wanting autonomy. They're wanting to show their agency, that they have power, that they are in control. So you've got these two little guys or girls who are fighting for that feeling of autonomy, and then they've got a sibling that's just right there within a year of their age. So you've got a time bomb. You've got a situation that is volatile. Same thing with the preteen and teen. You're in the same kind of a situation where you've got that struggle for independence and for self identity and agency. And you've got the little brother picking on the older sister putting down the little brother, and they're just at each other all the time. So, with the 2 and 3 year old, we've got to give them opportunities to feel independent. We've got to give them opportunities to feel like they have a say in what's going on. Check and see what they're fighting about. Probably they're fighting about this topic or the mine thing, my toy, my book, my this. And all of a sudden, when the other child picks up a book, suddenly that's my book and I wanted it. And so we have to deal with that kind of an issue with the little guys, with learning how to share, waiting our turn, that it may be your book or it may be both of your books. You know, if you're like my family, when I was growing up, we had little bookshelves with books in it. And, you know, some books were my sister's, some were mine, but most were ours. We would read them all. If I had a book she wanted at the same time, we just learned to wait our turn or to share, to read together. And so maybe you could show them that if they both want the same book at the same time, mom can take a minute and let's read the book together. But we're not going to fight about it. If you fight about it, then we'll wait and we'll read the book when you stop fighting, and put the book up on the counter where they can't get to it and say, we're going to read this together since you both want to hear this story. But right now, you're not acting like you want to be together. So we're not going to read it right now. When you guys can start being friendly again and best friends again and hug each other, then we'll pull the book down and we'll take a minute and we'll read it together. Stuff like that. Giving them a choice. You have a choice right now. Do you want to sit on the couch or the chair? Do you want to go to bed with the night light on or the night light off? Do you want your bedroom door open or closed? Giving them choices that you're okay with, both choices. We're going to take our bath now. Do you want to wear the blue pajamas or the green pajamas after you take your bath? We're still going to do the bath. So you're giving them choices. You're giving them agency. When they're fighting against each other, if the problem is that they're both trying to make their will be done by the other kid, you're going to just have to talk to them a little bit about that and say, no, you make your choice. You're going to wear the green pajamas, but your brother's made his choice and he's going to wear the red pajamas. You don't get to tell him what he's going to wear. Mommy can tell him what to do, but you're not the mommy. You're not the daddy. You have to have those kinds of conversations that are age appropriate and help them navigate those waters. If you're dealing with older children who are being disrespectful and belligerent toward each other, then I think there's a respect problem. More important than loving one another is respecting one another. And I think you can even talk to your kids about that. There are times when your siblings or teens, especially, that they may not like each other all that much. They just hit that stage of development where they just don't like each other really a whole lot. They pick on each other. They see each other's faults. They may even be embarrassed by each other. So we have to have the conversation about respect, and we have to demonstrate that. My students used to always laugh at me because I would call them yes, ma'am, yes, sir. That's just the way I referred to them, as sir and ma'am. They would be laughing the first time it happened, but after that, it just was part of the culture of our classroom. I always tried my best to show respect to my students. I have a sarcastic sense of humor. I always have. And I guess it came naturally because my mom had one too. As a teacher, I had to really rein that in. One way I could do that was to use that kind of addressing my students as sir and ma'am so that it would remind me that sarcasm comes across as disrespect, and I couldn't use that very often in the classroom. If we're not showing respect, if we're showing a lot of sarcasm in our home, we need to be clear that even if we're being sarcastic, we are not being disrespectful, that we are not attacking the person, we are not diminishing or demeaning the person. We need to build a culture of respect. We need to hold our children to that. If our child is acting out and not being respectful, we need to find out what's at the core of that. If we've taught them that we will not tolerate this kind of behavior, and we've taught them that our family is a family of love and respect, then we need to find out what's triggering it. Where is it coming from? Is someone saying something to them at school that is making them want to lash out at their sibling? It could be that a child said, "What's wrong with your sister? Why is she so weird?" Could be something as simple as that. So then they have this little chip on their shoulder of embarrassment and anger toward their sibling. Or it could be something that that child is saying to our other child without us hearing it, and we don't understand that that's what's going on. We have to be diligent, and we have to ask God to help us to hear the things we need to hear. That is an important prayer for a parent. If a child is saying things they should not be saying to another sibling, we need to hear it. We need to know, or at least have our children be willing to talk to us and tell us what's going on. We need to be diligent with that and build a culture of respect. That starts when they're toddlers, but it's especially important when they're hitting their tween years and their teen years. We've got to show respect. And again, I know I say it over and over and over, keep the conversations open. If our child knows they can talk to us about anything and they can come to us with anything, we can keep those conversations open and deal with a lot of problems before they become big problems. And then, of course, pray and ask God for wisdom. I tell you that all the time as well, but it's true. We can't do this on our own. We are not supernatural. We are not all knowing, but God is. He knows everything. He hears everything they've said to each other. He can help us hear what we need to hear, see what we need to see, to give us discernment into the situation and how best to help them get along. I hope these tips help you. If you have further questions, please feel free to put it in the comments. We would love to hear from you. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so glad you were here, and I hope this blessed you. I want to remind you that we have a Zoom class for homeschool teenagers wanting to publish a book. We have 10 openings. It is a 3-semester class because we take your child from their story idea to developing that idea into a really good book. Then we lead them into understanding the publishing industry, as many parts of it as we can, so that they are well equipped to know the ropes if they feel this is where God is leading them in their lives. And we finish with helping them to publish their book and to have it available for family and friends and beyond. So check that out. The link is in the show notes, and we would love to have you join us. Our prayer, as always, is that you feel empowered, equipped, and encouraged to walk by faith and to embrace everyday discipleship every day with the people in your life.